we go. All right. Okay, everybody. Oh, man, that was a wasted 15 minutes of time talking to myself. Oh, boy. Thank you for pointing it out that there was no sound coming through. That's what you get for, you know, putting me in alone. What do I know about this stuff? It's just technology. Uh, So yeah, man, I wanted to talk pandemic, and I was talking pandemic, and it was a great speech. But basically, what I was going on about is how the pandemic was probably well, no, not probably, was a very good force of change in companies, with companies, forcing them to make changes to connectivity, to hardware, to software, to what management of all of these different disparate things, changing their processes to fit with a completely remote work model. Enterprises, we all know enterprises, they don't like change. IT admins, even in enterprises, are can be very adverse to change because things are working, and that becomes scary. Oh God, we want to update this and you want to do that and make this change. What if it doesn't work? What happens then? We got to go back and we got to fix it. And so a lot of the pandemic forcing companies to look past, hey, this just works. We're going to leave it alone. Because really, let's be honest, when companies do that, that's when we still get software running on Windows 2000 Server, Windows. I've seen even some NT351 out there. You're right. No, I have not. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I meant that I have been told by others that they've seen those still out there. So you don't want to get stuck in that situation where the vendor's gone. You've got no way of updating the software, but it's become a critical piece of your business. And you have to sometimes bite the bullet and make those changes. So from that standpoint, the pandemic is actually very good. And from an EUC perspective, obviously that was a boon to all the EUC specialists out there, to the companies, whether it's being able to sell more of their software. But I think the biggest winner in all of this are the cloud vendors. All those people that said, we'll never move to the cloud. Never, ever, ever. Don't talk to me about the cloud. Oh, they suddenly need cloud because you couldn't get any new hardware, or it was taking forever to get new hardware. And you had to get all of your employees back up and running very, very, very quickly. Many times, getting key personnel up and running in less than 24 hours. So, those are big changes. And a lot of people had to put workloads into the cloud just to be able to get things to work. One of the big things that it also pointed out, and it was interesting because interviewing with somebody about this, and we got talking about Active Directory versus Azure Active Directory. And, Active Directory that comes with Windows is really strictly for on-premises management of Windows computers. Group policy, security, all of that is essentially dependent on Windows being able to communicate back to a domain controller. And now that all these people, all these laptops, all this hardware, they are now spread out, not in an office controlled by the company. So how do you manage those? How do you get them to check into Active Directory? Those types of things. So this goes on, this is, I think this is great stuff, because this has allowed companies to kind of test out those products, whether it's Intune, endpoint management, whatever it's called today, whether it's VMware, Workspace ONE, being able to manage those remotely from anywhere is I think key to the future of where we are right now, or where we are going right now. Is work from home going to be the end all be all? Probably not. It's probably going to be less than what I would hope it would be. Um, I think it's going to be clearly hybrid for quite a while, but people are social creatures. Even if you don't like going into the office, you still occasionally want to go in sometimes. Even I've been working from home for over a decade now, and I miss meeting up with people, just being able to talk to live human beings face to face, shaking hands, giving hugs, whatever the case may be. And that's who we are as human beings. So forcing companies to upgrade their technology, which is typically pretty difficult, especially as you get into larger and larger systems and processes. I don't know how many times as a sales engineer I have run into the argument that, well, our stuff just works right now. We've got it working. We don't want to change it. We don't want to add anything that might create issues. Well, yeah, that works to a certain extent. But like I said earlier, yeah, if you don't change this stuff, then it's static. And when the big changes do come, it's going to be harder to get your systems, your processes up to speed. The other thing, DJ and I had talked about, processes, business processes, mid last year, I think it was, in one of our THRIVEcasts. And what a perfect time it was for managers and employees to just, throw ideas at the wall, see what sticks. How can we change these processes for the better? Because really, that was, let's say 6 to 8 months of time to experiment, because a lot of people, this is all new. So there were no full blown processes for 100% of my workforce to be remote. So, that's good stuff. So it allowed companies to do that as well. So a lot of change that really should be happening more and more often, especially enterprise customers, I believe. And I know change is hard, change is scary, but unfortunately, change is necessary. You don't want to get stuck. You don't want to get stuck on old technology that's obsolete and there's no support for. A lot of these companies, they pay millions and millions of dollars for support of old Windows operating systems. If they had just taken that money originally and done what they needed to do, they'd probably be saving money well over the long run. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind as well. Yeah, no, see, I'm trying to remember now everything that I talked about, because now I'm thinking I'm double talking everything. So Azure Active Directory. Oh, I don't know how far I continued on that, but being able to remotely manage, not having to have a computer logged into the domain, but still being able to fully manage those things, that's great stuff. That's the future. And while I am not completely up to speed on all of the announcements for Windows 11, it appears Microsoft is obviously has that philosophy as well. And yes, I understand there's a vested interest, but cloud is here. Cloud is here to stay. Rant and rave all you want about stuff, but in the end, the cloud does help make some of these things much easier. And remote management just being one of them, being able to manage from anywhere without necessarily having to VPN somewhere into a data center to be able to manage a bunch of desktops, is great. And from a user perspective, it's much easier and much better for them, I think. So that's my opinion on that. So what else? What else? What else? Yeah, it's quite interesting with everything that's going on, and now we've got Windows 11, and if I remember right, I believe Microsoft had said Windows 10 would be the last version of Windows. Truthfully, I would love to see Microsoft kind of get rid of the versioning of Windows Client, even Windows Server. Really, it's while the cadences of the updates for Windows 10 twice a year could was a bit much, especially in the beginning when they gave you what, like a year or two, year and a half to stay up to date, um, or whatever that very short time frame. Um, Extending that out and then only doing twice a year is not necessarily a bad thing. And as internet connections become better and faster, um, that can be a very, very good thing. But on the same token, you hit all of the update problems that they have hit over the last year and a half, 2 years, whatever it's been. Um, it's a give and take. I don't think it's a bad way of doing Windows updates. In fact, I was advocating. I remember this conversation, God, years ago. Well, it was probably 20 years ago. Active Directory was out, so it was what, Windows 2000 or something. And Novell was still around, and the Novell Directory Service (NDS) um, was a really nice directory service. Some of the features it had, like being able to carve out portions of the directory instead of replicating all of the directory to all of the domain controllers and all that. Um, but one of the things that I forget who our Microsoft rep was at the time, but we were talking. I was like, man, it would be great because I mean, really, what is Active Directory? It's a database and registry entries. Um, why not? Why not decouple it from an OS? Why not be able, say, hey, you know what? We need the new features of Active Directory, but we got apps over here that need to stay. Why can't you just update Active Directory? I mean, domain controllers. It always seemed a bit silly that wasn't entirely possible at the time. But I think they're obviously clearly going in that direction, or at least would love to be able to update features instead of just whole OS upgrades, which makes it difficult. One thing actually I do want to pick on Microsoft about, most especially, um, is the enterprise version of Windows. Okay? Why have an enterprise version of Windows that has the Microsoft Store default games installed on in the OS? All this stuff that administrators have to go in and remove if they can, because we all know how fun removing store apps has been since Windows 10 was released. When I think of an enterprise version of Windows, I think of a true enterprise version of Windows that I, as an administrator, don't have to go in and completely change, all these default settings. You've got an enterprise version. You've even got a pro version, but the enterprise especially should not come with all the consumer stuff, or at least it's hidden by default, gone out of there. Let the administrators make the decision to add them in, not have to find a clunky way of removing a lot of that stuff. So make an enterprise version that is truly enterprise worthy, not a consumer version that is just slapped with an enterprise label. And yes, I know there's little bits and pieces that are different with enterprise versus pro versus home. Let's be honest. It's just stuff locked behind code walls, right? Is that a good thing? Is that a thing? Code walls, paywalls, walls. Yeah. So So Microsoft, please, enterprise versions. Oh man, I have got a pulpit and I can just keep talking. Um, something else. I want to talk AVD, Azure Virtual Desktops, Windows Virtual Desktop, whatever you want to call it. I had done a video, last year on this, but I'm going to bring it up again. Azure Virtual Desktops is going to commoditize the remoting field. I think VMware I think VMware and Citrix are very much aware of it. I think VMware in this case is ahead of the game. Looking over the VM worlds, the past, definitely last year, and I believe even in 2019, you don't hear much about Horizon View anymore. You hear about Workspace ONE and everything that kind of ties into that. But really what I believe they're doing is giving, or it's, how do I say it? They're pushing that stuff to the background, and it's the model of, I need to get the users to work. I've got all these tools. I can pick and choose which tools I want to use. So it's not a focus on Horizon View and remoting apps. It's what is the best way to get users the applications they require. Is it a push? Is it remoting? What is it? I don't care. I just need to get them there. There is a company out there, Liquid, that I will mention, that does that. That is doing that as well with with a lot of good logic, things like that. So that's something to look into. Heard great things about them actually, and I've seen demos, and it's pretty cool stuff. But in the end, the Intune's endpoint managers, I forget what Microsoft, I think it's Endpoint Manager now. But the endpoint managers, Workspace ONEs, those are all, to me, I'm going to call that the future, even though it's people are using them now and whatnot, but they're probably not as widespread as the vendors would like. So if you look at the VMworld's past couple of years, you just didn't hear much about it. Microsoft is totally focused on the cloud in Azure Virtual Desktop. After 20 plus years of terminal services, they finally take it seriously. Man, that's exciting. That is why I was excited about Windows Virtual Desktop when it was first announced, when it was first released, because for the first time ever, it's a key component of their company strategy, whereas before it was just always kind of an afterthought. So it's going to be commoditizing the market. Obviously, this is my opinion and only my opinion, but I think it's going to. And I think VMware is ahead of the curve on that. I think Citrix is trying to pivot. I'm just not sure if they're going to be able to fully successfully pivot, or what they're going to be able to do. But obviously, they are the 800-pound gorilla out there. They have great ties with Microsoft and everything else. So it's not like they're going to go away tomorrow or anything. And they may never go away, but it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting because it does change the landscape wholeheartedly, I think, in what is possible. And when you look at companies, I mean, if you think about the competition for a second, let's strictly remoting. So, virtual apps and desktops from Citrix, Horizon View, all the other vendors, there was a barrier to entry, which was you needed a broker, you needed remote access, you needed a client, you needed a protocol, okay, to separate yourself. Citrix, obviously, ICA, HDX, been around forever, works wonderfully well. VMware started PC over IP, now has essentially, for all intents and purposes, moved over to Blast. They work great, and now RDP has caught up. It's RDP is good for, I'd say, 80 to 90% of the people that are working with remote apps or remote desktops. It does the job. It can do the job. Now, what does Azure Virtual Desktops bring to the table outside of the commoditizing? Is they allow companies to build interfaces. Let me take a step back. Azure Virtual Desktops, Windows Virtual Desktops, whatever you want to call it, is a platform as a service. Now, you don't, at least I don't hear Microsoft speaking about it that way publicly. And I know a lot of people think of it as, well, I should be able to just bring up WVD and be able to fully management from the GUI and everything else. That's not their plan. It's not their plan at all. They want others they want to create an ecosystem around it. Cloud Jumper, which was bought by NetApp, Nerdio is out there. And you look at them, you look at managing AVD manually through the native Azure interface versus what a Nerdio or Cloud Jumper or any other vendor can do. It's a night and day difference. Night and day. Now, the cool thing is, with the way Microsoft is developing and positioning AVD, with Citrix and VMware, you are essentially stuck with their interfaces. You can PowerShell things around and all that good stuff, but for all intents and purposes, you're using their interface probably most of the time. With AVD and the APIs and the PowerShell, you can create your own internal UI into WVD. Don't like Nerdio's interface, or you want to, put something else, you'd be able to do that. I'm not saying you could modify Nerdio's interface, but just the example of, you can have a full-fledged interface that does something above and beyond that you need as an administrator, but it's not a big enough feature maybe for everyone else. And so you could create your own and add your own feature list in there. The other thing this does, now, mention Citrix, mention VMware, commoditizing the market with AVD. Vendors like Nerdio, they don't need the broker, they don't need the protocol, they don't need the remote access, they don't need the client. That's all built, or not quite built into Windows yet, but it's getting there, right? The client are different versions of RDP. They can come in at a lower price than the big two vendors and give 80 to 90% of the functionality because of all the ties and the different Azure services and things like that. That's huge. And I think people are overlooking. Yes, I know, cloud, expensive, not always. And that's not the only piece of the puzzle you should be looking at. Obviously, it's always important, but if you're going to reject the technology strictly on price, I think you're doing a disservice. I think, if it makes sense, the price is worth it. That's the whole idea, is the value that you're getting for paying a certain amount of money. And I think a lot of people would love to save some money from licensing costs because, outside of compute, AVD is, I hate saying free, but it's much of it is built into your licensing already. And all you need to do is pay for some compute, which, based on conversations I've had and seen with pricing, is not as bad as people may think. I think if you do the calculations I think you will find that the cost of managing a PC versus AVD, whether it's multi-user or single session, comes pretty close to the same. And when you start talking to Nerdios and others, and then there's, while WorkSpot isn't directly involved with AVD, they can give you some cost containment with those technologies as well. So, yeah, if you want to run it native, you can, but yeah, again, you can run it native, you can create your own interface because, I mean, let's be honest, even for those of us that have been doing this for a long time, it's a pain to have to go through manual. I'm not a PowerShell expert. I'm not an Azure expert. I can manage Azure. I can manage, with PowerShell if need be. But in the end, most administrators are still using the GUI and wanting to do those jobs. Now, I will be the first to tell anyone and everyone, including myself, you got to learn PowerShell. You got to know how to be able to do this. If you're going to be managing Windows or Azure or anything like that, you need to learn PowerShell. Get rid of the manual steps. Automate, automate, automate. But it's time, it's effort, and a lot of us don't have the time to be able to putting in enough effort to learn a new language or anything like that. But if you're management, you really need to get your people going on that stuff because they will run much more efficiently, and be able to knock out the bigger projects that crop up in the business instead of handling all these little tiny little fires here and there. Um, you know, do those updates, get that software upgraded, get that hardware upgraded, look at your processes, do all that. Do all that. Let your administrators do what they are meant to do, not put out the little fires. Oh boy, that's my rant on AVD. Not rant. That's my pulpit, my bully pulpit on AVD. Um, I think it's a great thing. Are there issues? Yes, there are issues. Every piece of software in existence has issues, whether it's with the software, whether it's with licensing, whatever. Yeah, I'm so sick and tired of hearing constant complaints about some things that just, everyone's got them. And I'm not saying you don't complain, but please, yes, we know. Everybody knows. Just because it's not fixed right away doesn't mean a company isn't listening. Maybe there's not a big enough demand for it, or whatever the case may be. In airing dirty laundry in public is not necessarily the best way to go. It can be, don't get me wrong. But having a good relationship with vendors, with customers, goes a long way. And, I know a lot of people at Microsoft. I know a lot of people at VMware. I know a lot of people in a lot of places. And use the contacts that you have to deliver some of those messages. Now, there was an instance where NetScaler had a huge security problem, and yeah, that needed the public to raise the concern that this needs to be patched, or this is the workaround to eliminate that security hole. That is a good example of the community coming together and publicly calling out. And I hate picking on Citrix. I don't mean to pick on Citrix, but for something like that needed to be called out. That needed all the voices raised and heard because of just how bad that security hole was. So it's not always a bad thing to say, and it's not bad to say, point out some flaws here and there, but continuously harping and pounding and not offering anything constructive to that criticism is the worst, in my opinion, is one of the worst things you can do. Because at that point, you're just complaining to complain. You know, it's anyone can point out flaws. That's easy enough. I mean, one of my credos when I'm selling anything, whether it's software, hardware, whatever the case may be, I'm not going to go in to a prospect and to a customer and start bashing the competition. I don't want someone to buy a product from me because of fear. Okay? Because what will happen is another vendor will come in right behind me, do the same thing that I did to sell the product, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. You know, spread the FUD, and then suddenly that customer is running their software. I want a customer to buy from me because they feel they have the best product for them. It may not be the best product in the world. It may not be the highest rated product, but you know what? It's the best for them. And that's, you know, and that develops, and that makes it harder, one, for the administrators, the end users, to basically shelfware the software. And it makes it harder for anyone else coming in behind you to sell into that account or try to replace what you've sold into there. You know, so don't sell by fear. Don't sell by uncertainty and doubt. Don't do anything like that. Don't go bashing. I'm not saying this is always hard because there's a line, right? You know, you don't want to sell by FUD, but yet there are times that you're going to have to point out those differences. It's all in how you articulate those differences that make a huge difference between selling by fear and selling positively into the account. You know, so always keep that in mind. You don't want to be doing crazy weird stuff. You don't want to be selling by fear. You just get replaced. The other thing it does is that it really helps you develop the relationship with the administrator, the end user that bought the product, so that, you know, they'll sit there and go, wow, you know, Jeff, he really helped me. He helped me develop this and get this and going, really helped us out. I'm going to work for company XYZ. I want to bring them back in and see if their product will work here, because I know Jeff's going to be honest and upfront with me about this, and this. Then there's the other side of it, is that if I go somewhere and I go in to sell to them, and I'm not saying competitively, but, you know, different market, whatever the case may be, they go, oh yeah, you helped me then. Yeah, come on in. Let's talk about what you're doing now, what you're selling now. I want to hear more about it. You know, that whole trusted advisor thing, that is, I know that term is overused and I even hate using it, but it is so important to develop those relationships and keep those relationships. Sales is a hard field, you know, especially with the way companies typically, I guess, pay salespeople. You know, you've got quotas, you've got monthly quotas, you've got quarterly quotas, you've got yearly quotas. You know, and I understand the reasoning behind that, but it also makes it very difficult to develop those relationships as well. You know, it's all about, what have you done for me lately? And that works to a certain extent, clearly. But I think over the long haul, it's better to have the relationships than it is better to have, you know, that immediate need fulfilled for the money. I don't know. That's just me. I don't know. It's just, I feel bad because of the way that pressure is put on especially the sales people, not the pre-sales, which there is, but the sales people themselves having to, at the end of a quarter or end of a month, try to push as much deals through as possible to try to hit some arbitrary number. You know, again, I get why it's there. It just, I don't think it's the best way to sell. Unfortunately, I don't have a solution. So there you go. I'll admit it. I don't have a solution for it. So it is what it is for right now. I think there has to be a better way of compensating the salespeople without pushing inordinate amount of sales that probably shouldn't have happened. And I've seen that way too often. So yeah, there you go. What else? What else? What else? What else? What else? As you can see, my Red Wings. Um, Signed Steve Yzerman down there below the Red Wing symbol, Mr. Yzerman. In Yzerman, we trust to rebuild the Red Wings into their 90s, early 2000s glory. That's the way it has to be. Because it's the Red Wings. Original six. They got to be doing better than what they're doing right now. Ugh. But as a Griffins, Grand Rapids Griffins, that is the AHL farm team for the Red Wings. I'm excited this year simply because there are some great prospects coming up. Yzerman's doing a heck of a job right now. I think I look at the Lightning, Tampa Bay Lightning, and I see how they are still successful with what Yzerman put in there a few years ago. And they're still success with his people, his players. You know, so it's going to happen. It's going to happen. We're going to be lifting that cup. It may take a little longer, may take longer than what people want, but hey, it is what it is. You don't build a championship team to last by just throwing people at it, you know, and just say, hey, let's get all the best players now, waste our salary cap space, and in 2 years we'll win a cup, but then the next year we'll be down in the dumps again. So there you go. That's my sports right there. Yeah, so, you know, pay attention to Windows 11. There are a lot of hooks into Azure, obviously. And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing from an enterprise standpoint. You can argue home, I think, or home edition, personal PCs, whatever. But, you know, I think for enterprises and the way we are going post-pandemic, I think that's going to be a very big thing. Not having to rely on the Active Directory and just all the stuff, maybe not all the stuff through Azure, but you know what I mean. It is what it is. We are in changing times. Change that has come much faster than really any of us could have ever predicted. It's all craziness. Oh, man. So I would say I've been talking for almost an hour, which technically I have, but no one was hearing me for the first 15 minutes. So that kind of sucks. But what else can we talk about? Anyone got any suggestions? I would love to hear suggestions. If anyone has anything they want to bring up, or you would love to hear me get on my soapbox, my pulpit, what have you, hey, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to say what needs to be said. I ain't stupid. I'm not going to go on and insult people and stuff like that. It's, you know, I do try and I fail, you know, like I said, you know, about the whole criticism without any sort of constructive feedback is just poor. But you know, it is what it is. Sometimes you fail, sometimes you succeed. So, oh, sing opera. Oh, yeah. You don't want me singing. Oof, man, that would be, oof, man. Although I do sing to my kids just to annoy them to no end. My 11-year-old. I will wake him up with "You Are My Sunshine." I only know a couple, like the chorus or whatever. It kills him every time. I also make up my own songs because I'm a little cray cray in the head. Um, so, well, thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. It's interesting. I think AVD is a game changer, and I don't think most people realize how much of a change it will end up causing right now. So it's going to be very interesting to see. And like I said, with Citrix and VMware, those are obviously the two companies that are very much tied with ties into, and especially Citrix, into the whole remoting thing. I mean, my whole career is essentially based on Citrix, so it's, so I don't say this lightly. Excuse me. But yeah, it's interesting years ahead from a remoting standpoint. Very, very, very interesting. What else? What else? I don't know, guys. Yeah, I do want to bring this up. Just one second. DJ doesn't know I'm going to do this, but again, you know, I tout this book. This is seriously, guys and gals, everybody. This is a critical key book that everyone should read through, especially those that are younger in the career, or maybe you're looking, how can I advance my career? Maybe you're mid-career. This this has a lot of the things that I have had to learn the hard way. Not saying that I wouldn't have had to learn the hard way anyway, because block a stone up there sometimes, but this would have been an immense, immense help. So I would highly recommend, if you have ever wanted, I don't know, I would buy it. I would buy it. I would read it. And, truthfully, I would love to see companies, buy a few of these and hand out to their consultants, their sales engineers, architects, whatever the case may be. The methodologies in this book are second to none. It is very, very, very good. So there you go. Just Do This by Mr. Eshelman. If you look at the thrive-it.com website, there are some deals there that you can get the books. It is awesome stuff. Keep that in mind. Uh, Seems like there was something I wanted to bring up. I don't know, but what I'm going to do? I had a little bit of time. We lost power like right before, or we lost power earlier today, gained power actually about 15 minutes beforehand, before going live here. Um, I was working on a little video, and I don't think. Actually, let me see if I can add this in, because I think it's pretty funny. This is what I was hoping to push out before. Um, yeah, here we go. All right. Nope. So you guys should be able to see this. This is my little thing. Yeah, I have new toy. Oh no, am I lost? All right, there we go. I love this. This was a great little thing. I didn't get a chance to show DJ yet though, but you are seeing it live. Yes, good stuff, man. I was gonna pirate his. I had this whole thing planned out in my head, but I just didn't have enough time to throw it all together, unfortunately. So that is what I wanted to show everybody, because I think it was hilarious. It's what you get for giving me new toys to play with, or me buying myself new toys to play with. the video editor I have, trying to get my green screen working, all that good stuff. That is a lot more difficult than I had ever expected it would be. You know, when somebody says lighting is critical for green screen, yeah, it absolutely truly is. And I've got a very small office space to use my green screen, and that makes it even harder. Not that I'm looking to do anything fancy or anything like that. I just want to spice things up a little bit with the videos, with the video series that I'll be coming out with. All right. I think I'm going to call it a night, everybody. It's evening here in the East in Michigan. Yeah, so pay attention. Next week, we have Laura Wallen coming on the show with us. If you've been involved in Citrix, CTP, marketing, anything like that, you should know who Laura is. She is now at WorkSpot, lucky WorkSpot, picking her up. Great woman, great person. Really looking forward to talking with her next week, next Wednesday. We're going to be on next Wednesday. Don't ask me the time because I've totally forgot. 5:30, 6:30, something like that, Eastern. So yeah, please join us for that. And I think with that, I'm going to sign off, everybody. I appreciate those who showed up and those who watched later. I'm going to trim those first 15 minutes out, because it's just me being an idiot talking to nobody. All right. Thank you, everybody. Love you all. Thanks for joining me. Talk to everyone later.